All right. Well, welcome back to another episode with Business PMO. We have David Helps, Chief of Staff over at the Project Management Office for South Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. Welcome again, David.
Thank you.
All right. So we find it funny because we're focusing many of the next sessions and episodes on problem solving, and we're gonna have to do like a B-roll clip or a C-roll clip. I don't know, maybe this is the B-roll clip.
A blooper.
Just bloopers all over the place, and say, here's some BPMO problems. But we've had a lot of fun with it. So last week we talked about problem solving as it relates to getting to know yourself.
Yes.
And now we're going to go into problem solving as it relates to getting to know others. I kind of want to repeat this philosophy that was put out by M. Scott Peck, just in case you missed the last one, because it really drives the content.
Yes.
And as project managers, what do we do if not problem solve? And so we really, really want to focus. It's about leadership within project management context. So it's this. This is from M. Scott Peck and the book, The Road Less Traveled. So once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult. Because once it has been accepted, the fact of life is difficult no longer matters. So that's where we're headed.
I can't think of a truer statement for today's world.
Yeah. So this is we're broken into 3 parts. Our last episode, problems introduce us to ourselves. Now we're going to focus on problems introduce us to others. And then in the next episode, problems introduce us to opportunities.
Hey.
So that one's a longer session. So all right, so here we go. We're going to dive right on in. So the first thing that John Maxwell says in his books, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0, when it comes to problem solving, is how we deal with problem solving with others. And so he first talks about people who make problems worse. Now, he uses an illustration.
Yes.
And I always love to see if you agree or disagree and all that. So of course, feel free to disagree with the master of leadership, but or share maybe some examples where you saw this in your work experience. So John starts off by telling people everybody in the organization carries 2 buckets with them. One is a bucket of gasoline, one is a bucket of water. He says, when you have problems, the sparks of life, you need to know the people on your team. Are they the ones that are going to throw water on that spark, or are they going to throw gasoline on that spark and make it worse? And that those people represent your liabilities. Now, we don't always get to choose who our project team members are.
No, we don't.
And we don't get to choose a lot of things in life. So some people want to put the fire out, and some people want to make it bigger. They just live to see the world burn, I guess.
Yes.
And important as leaders for us to see this. But have you seen this in life, or would you add a third bucket, or would you say they're all one or the other? Or
I think it's pretty accurate. Like you said, we can't always choose who's on the teams, and the thing is that I have dealt with several employees and also several peers in the past that their first reaction is to throw the gasoline on it. That's the first reaction. The first reaction is to blow it up larger than it needs to be and make a bonfire out of it instead of just a little flame.
Now, knowing that you can't necessarily get rid of these people all the time,
Nope.
how do you deal with them? The fire starters, the people who love to see the world burn.
So what I usually do is I try to use their perspective. Okay, so one of the things is we all have different perspectives from where we come from, usually built on our history and our past and our life and stuff that we dealt with. And what I try to do with this group in particular is try to understand that perspective, and then figure out how to use their their push to make it bigger into turning that into more ideas of how to, for those who have the water pail, to help us to put it out. Because in their attempt to make it larger, we actually can learn something about the problem in the fire that can also help us turn around and figure out different ways to put it out.
Okay.
So I actually try to use, it's that old devil's advocate. Are they doing it destructively, or are they doing it are you doing it constructively? This is kind of the same format. You can take something that somebody's trying to use destructively and turn it into something that can be used constructively.
All right.
If you can do that
Manipulation for the force of good.
Exactly. in a way that doesn't tick everybody off.
Okay.
That's the thin line you walk on. Is using it can also aggravate certain people. So you got to understand the perspective and the personalities and the perceptions that are going on.
And so there's my plug for DISC.
Yes.
Understanding the personality traits and what their fears are and what their motivators are and all that good stuff. All right, which I think is an important thing to note, because as leaders, you have to work with everyone. You can't just say this person's a problem, I'm gonna put them to the side, and because there is good that can come from everything. All right, well, very good. So here's the other one: people who are problem magnets. So people who just seem to naturally put themselves in a hole. And so John Maxwell, he refers to his I think it's his 21 irrefutable laws.
Yes.
And this one is the first law of holes. I want to make sure I'm enunciating correctly here. The first law of holes. And he says the first law of holes is that when you're in one, stop digging.
Yes, please.
Well, there are some people who just once they get started on that professional grave, there's nothing like digging a hole deeper.
Oh, yes, they love it. They can't stop.
And they can't. They just can't help themselves. And so what he challenges leaders to in this one is he says it's a two-way street for sure.
Yeah.
That they have to want to change,
yes.
But the leader has to be willing to jump in that hole with them, take the shovel, say stop digging, and then work with them to get out of it.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever had to do that? It's almost a rhetorical question here. Without naming anybody,
change the
names to protect the innocent and the guilty alike? And give us an example where you had to jump in a hole with somebody to get them to stop digging and lead them out of that hole so that they don't do the same thing over and over.
So this is before I started taking over the PMOs and running them myself. I was, you got the head, the director, and then you got the two PM2s, and then you got a whole bunch of PM1s, and I had one other PM2. He could not help himself. He tried to pick fights with as many of the wrong people as you could. Yep. And I had to get in there a couple times and tell him, look, there are certain people that are actually going to be the ones that are going to help us fix this problem. But these are also the people that usually are the ones we have to massage a little bit and work we have to work their ego to get them to come to where we want to go. We can't just go in and just go guns a-blazing and just argue everything. We have to work our group to get them to the point where we need them to be, but it's their idea. And then they can help us. But every time he would jump in and he would just go in guns a-blazing, and he would just keep digging with every argument and every comment. I'd be like, okay,
you're gonna
calm
die
down,
in this career.
Calm down. Let's refocus the meeting and get back to over here, and then we'll get back over there in a couple of meetings.
Yeah, so, I think one time I made a comment to somebody who was, let's just say their star was on the rise, and I could have gone with that person and all that, but I was still very young and stupid. And I went to that person, and I don't know why I was in this mood, but I was in this constant mood to try to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
And he was my boss. He was a director getting ready to become an AVP, and as history turned out, he ended up as a senior VP within 3 years of me making this comment. He told me to go tell somebody to do something, and I looked him right in the eye and I said, "You don't have the authority to do that."
Yep.
So I had some corrective action that took place on my part.
You had to create a corrective action plan for yourself.
Yes. He looked at me and he says, "Well, you obviously need to be managed," and thankfully I wasn't fired. But somebody had to jump in the hole and take the shovel from me and go like, "Tony, really? Don't be that dumb."
Yeah, don't go there.
And he taught me how to navigate, you know, those kind of scenarios. So, all right. So again, time. I always look at the clock. And I'm like, all right. So problem solving, introducing us to others is there are people who give up in the face of problems. The example that he gives in this is an executive assistant that he had pre-Google.
Yes.
Now, it's called a Rolodex. Now, for those who don't know what a Rolodex is, this is a thing that has like a little card, and it has like 500 of them. And this is where you would keep your address book. And you write down the contact and the number and all that, and then you put them in alphabetical order. When you need to find a contact, you... And I hope I got that on camera. So anyway, John Maxwell, I guess years ago, he had an executive assistant, and he told her, "I need you to get me the contact information for some person." 3 minutes later, the executive assistant comes back in and says, "Can't find it." And he was like, "Okay, this person just threw the problem right back at me. I just gave up in 3 minutes." So he said to her, "Bring me your Rolodex." And for the next 45 minutes, he went through one contact after another, making phone calls, following the breadcrumbs until he got the contact information for who he wanted.
Yep.
And he used that as a teachable moment, and he had her right there with them. And he said, "Now, what did you learn from this?" And she said, "Okay, never give up."
Yeah.
And she made a decision that if he says he needs something, just because it's not readily available doesn't mean you can't find it. So don't just be so quick to give up on this.
Exactly.
Now, have you ever encountered? Now, how have you handled this situation where you gave somebody an action item and they went, "Nope, sorry," and put it right back in your lap?
Well, and I think he did exactly what I did in my scenario, and what we've talked about in previous podcasts is that don't give somebody something to do as a leader that you're not willing to do yourself immediately if they do throw it back in your face. The reason for that is not just to show that you're there with them and you will dig just as you ask them to dig. The real thing there is the teachable moment of getting down there, showing them how to do it, and getting them to see, oh wait, if I would have just taken a couple of extra seconds to think about this, or a couple of extra minutes just to think about what was being asked, I would have done that too. Instead of just go, so yeah, I've had several instances where I've given tasks to people to go do to take care of, and they've just come back with I can't figure it out, and it's like, okay, then let me show you, and then moving forward you need to build on this, because from now on, after I've shown you how to handle this one, now the next time I ask you for something, it's going to be built off of this, and you're going to have to think about the next step that you need to do to solve that problem I just gave you.
And I think this forces people to grow.
Yes.
Which is what
it's the whole
leaders
purpose.
were supposed to be doing.
It's the purpose.
So, all right. And then he closes this out, very similar to how he closed out the last one when it comes to problems. Problem solving is a way to introduce ourselves to ourselves.
Yeah.
So this one is, he points out a study that was done, I guess, some years ago, of 400, just over 400 highly successful people. And they looked for commonalities. And the consistent thing that was across the board in most of them, because some people, they're outliers, but the vast majority of them fell into the category that from childhood, they had problem after problem after problem after problem. And what made them different was that they used those problems as stepping stones to success instead of a millstone to sink them to the bottom of the ocean. It became, they said, here's a problem, let me use this as something to build something with. And in this, I guess he's saying encourage teams to solve problems at the lowest level, spend time with them to show them how to solve problems instead of trying to solve problems for them. Because when you make somebody solve the problem for themselves, then they grow as a person. And he makes the case that our culture has gone from something, or our society, not our culture, our society in America at least, has kind of dwindled in this area. And he says the reason it's dwindled is because government has come in, and this is in John C. Maxwell's point of view, I happen to agree with it, is that government is now solving problems for people instead of going back to people solving problems on an individual level.
Correct. Yeah.
You see the same?
I do. It's the problem that we have is people see a problem or they see an adversarial situation, and their instinct is not to use it to look at it across the board and from different perspectives and figure out how to use it to grow. They now look at it as oh my gosh, I need somebody to get me out of this situation.
Right.
And that
here's the silver platter.
All that is doing is hurting themselves from being able to learn, grow, and mature, and then be able to take on the next level of, like I said before, I'm going to help you with this one, but this means the next time I ask you for something, it's not just going to be something that's this easy. You're now leveling up. So for all you gamers out there, you're now leveling up because I've shown you how to fix it. Now we're going to move up to the next hard thing.
All right,
and that's what it's about.
All right. Well, that's going to close us out. Thank you very much again for joining us. I know you're always with us, so you're coming back again. Next week, it's going to be problem solving as a way to introduce us to opportunities.
Yes.
So looking for the opportunities and problems. Thank you again very much, and we will see y'all next week. Have a good day.